Hopefully all you streakers are doing absolutely fantastic today. Jamie and I are excited to talk with you, well, about the past. We're going to be reminiscing on some of the guests that we've had on the Streaking podcast, talking about some of the insights that we've gained from them, and also what are some of the things we've learned. So with that, why don't we go ahead and let's start streaking. What is streaking and why should you do it?
Streaking is how you set up personal winning streaks. Look at who you want to be and what you need to do to become that person. This is Streaking.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jamie.
And we are streakers. Through 30 years of marriage and 7 children, we have learned the power of consecutive consistency or streaking.
To start streaking is simple. You just follow these 3 laws. Make it laughably simple, keep a record, and join the streaking community.
Streaking is your hidden superpower. With it, you will consistently progress and grow in whatever area of life you want.
In this podcast, Jeff and I will share all the fun, exciting, serious, solemn, wonderful parts of family, spiritual, professional, and personal life, and how streaking powers it all.
So join us in the conversation, join the movement, and start streaking today. So Jamie, over the last 2 years, we've had 38 guests on our podcast, and of all of those, I mean, we've gotten some pretty good insights from them. As you think about some of the things that some of the ones that come right to mind. For example, Nathaniel Nolan, Walk on All Fours. I started a streak and still have that streak alive today, but he's not quite a year old. I think I'm on day 330 of that. So that was an interesting one. Dr. Alex Korb about the upward spiral.
Yes.
That was an interesting one as well because of the neuroscience that came along with that.
Fascinating one. I think about Kara Golden that we had for Hint Water when she was on. I think about her a lot because I love her water.
and now drink her water all the time.
Yeah, we have our water streak that's helped us be able to be more healthy that way. We've had a lot of guests. In fact, one of the reasons that I was excited to do this is as I read through the list of people we've had, I look at it and I think each one of them has added something to my life now that I took away from the opportunity that we had to talk with them.
Yeah, that's true. Because like I was saying before, I think of Walking on All Four. Mm-hmm. I've added that. I've added Hint Water to my life. Thank you, Kara. Mm-hmm. We've now increased Hint Water sales.
And slow promo, I was at the grocery store and they now have in this like the juice boxes for kids, but it's Hint Water.
Oh, there you go.
Which is great.
So they're expanding out that way. Fantastic. I also have to go back to the original, the OG streak of not only running, but also because we had Mark Washburn on.
Yep.
And he's the president of the United States Running Streak Association or Streak Running Association.
Mm-hmm. And
how long is our streak now on running? 8? Almost over 8 years?
Yeah. That's amazing, huh?
Is it?
Yeah.
I look at your eyes and you're like, holy cow.
I'm like, has it really been 8 years?
Yes.
But yeah. And interesting to just how that has changed our life, the philosophy of just running consistently in general, because I think back to those 8 years, over those 8 years. And it's interesting because to me, it's kind of representative of life in the sense that I've had times that I felt like I was in awesome shape and training for a marathon. And then I've had times where it's been weeks and weeks of
we were just talking this morning
just doing
where you're
the
just
mile.
like, you know what? I got to start over.
I do. I'm in a mile phase right now but the amazing thing about that is that the streak has kept me going in those times. And that's what I think is.
Well, and I look at keeping the streak going because you have a sinus infection right now and you posted on the Streaking app just the other day. Or just yesterday, you said, I would not be out here if I had this. Now, some people may think that that's crazy.
I know. And that's why. And some of those people sometimes are me, where I'm just like yesterday was one of those days that I thought, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I still want to do
pause
this?
Right there. Some of those days, those people are me.
Some of those days, those people are me.
Where you
and I think about.
You think yourself is crazy.
I think about my walk yesterday, and again, I haven't done it yet today, so today will probably be very similar. But, when you don't feel good, you go through things kind of in a fog, and that was my walk yesterday. It was really slow, and I was looking at my watch every few minutes, and I'm like, oh, I'm at 0.34. Is that all? I feel like I've gone so far. But the thing that's really amazing about what streaking has done for me in my life is that exact thing, is recognizing that is life. There's those times where you feel like you're on top of the world and you're doing great. Or those times that you are on top of the world, but maybe you don't recognize it until you pass it. And then you look back and you think, I was doing so good. I should have appreciated it more when I was doing so good. And then there's those times when you have to slow down for various reasons, because that's life. Life,
right.
It ebbs and flows.
Right.
But the ability to be able to maintain those things that are important to us, that help us stay healthy, both mentally and physically, that's what streaking does.
Yeah.
And it's so good to have something that's teaching you.
Now, do you tell these things? I mean, is this kind of what you tell yourself as you go along? I mean, I know you're reminiscing a little bit, and we're going to talk more about the guests that we had, but it sounds to me like sometimes you have to talk yourself off the ledge, if you will.
Yes.
And that's why we talk about making the streaks laughably simple. I mean,
and maybe it's not talking myself off the ledge as much as it is talking myself out the door, or sometimes, I look at some of the streaks I've had for a really long time and that I'm still doing, a geography streak or something. And I look at it and I think, is this still doing me a lot of good? Because I made a lot of progress at the beginning, and then as life has gotten a little bit crazier, sometimes you don't see that progress as dramatic because
right.
I don't have as far to go.
Right.
But I look at it and I think it's still important to me. It's still fun to be learning those things every day. Or maybe I should say sometimes I'm learning and sometimes I'm just refreshing.
Right.
But it's important that I really like that it keeps going, even in times where I know I would have stopped.
Yeah.
Because of a couple reasons. Either life is busy or I'm not seeing that level of progress anymore at that, you know what I mean? Like when you start something new and you're really excited and you have a long ways to go, you feel like there's a lot of progress at the beginning. When you're consistent in something, I feel like that progress becomes, I don't know what, more flat because it's consistent. And so sometimes it can be harder to see.
Yeah.
But the consistency is in the fact that I'm still doing it and still adding those drops to the bucket, so to speak, every day.
Yeah. So interestingly, I want to go to something for just a second, and that is discouragement. And the reason I want to go to discouragement is recently, Jami and I have been putting in a new lawn. And it has been something that we took on ourselves, but we've done that in every single home that we've had. I've put in the sprinkler system. I've done all of the work to put the sprinkler system in, and we brought in all the topsoil, spread all the topsoil. And right now we don't have the force that we once had, which was 7 children.
Which is interesting because in some ways you think, oh, we have less to do. But in other ways, we have a lot less help.
That's right.
A lot less
Well, you're
help.
the one that often said, the reason I had a big family is so I could have a big family.
Yes.
In other
and
words,
the other thing that's funny
our
too
older
is
children would often help. Yes,
so much. And then when you
and then
have
they all
a
had
big
to
family,
grow
they
up and move out. Yes, we are angry at all of you for growing up and moving out, but we're also excited for you and happy. 2 truths can be held in the same
time. So this one we did intentionally again because we have the 2 boys still at home, and the thought process was,
well, I just know that I
help
worked
them
with
stay
my
busy
dad so
for work.
much, and it was so helpful with all the different things that I learned. I thought, I'm not raising grass or an irrigation system. I'm raising boys. And so let's get them out there and working hard, right?
Yeah. So discouragement.
Back to discouragement. So we get everything prepped, all the topsoil in. We've done everything.
And we did really good, you guys. Like we spent weeks and weeks getting all of the rocks out and getting it level. And then we spent another 2 weeks spreading the topsoil probably.
Yeah.
And we even were smart and pushed back to the sod an extra week because we thought we're not quite ready. We need to. And then when it did come, we were mostly ready. There was still a little bit that we were finishing up on the sprinkler system.
Right. So I would be installing the sprinklers ahead of you guys laying the sod. And it took us all day Saturday to get and when we talk about all day, I got up, I went on my run, came back and started at 6:30.
Yeah.
And then I was working on the sprinkler system at 6:30.
And we laid sod that whole day.
The whole day. Not only did we do that, so then we went to a reception for the Come Follow Me Foundation, and we came back at 9:00 that night and finished. We finished at 11 p.m. is when it was. So then,
but we didn't have the sprinklers up and fully running yet.
Not yet. No, I had them mostly installed. It was funny because we had covered 2 of them with sod. And Jami says to me, I remember we were looking for them Monday because we were trying to get the rest of the sprinklers taken care of. And we couldn't find these 2 sprinklers in the middle of the lawn because they had been covered with sod. And Jami yells at me, the next time, mark these with flags.
All you have to do is put a stupid flag in the ground, and I won't be doing this. But
we found it.
We did. And part of the discouragement has been a little bit that we've been working really hard and we've planned as best we could, but there were still a few things outside of our control. For example, the reason that we were behind on the sprinklers is because it rained every single day,
which we were excited about. Yeah.
So which created a big mud pit for us. So we couldn't do as much as what we were going to do every day. And then the minute we lay our sod, it hasn't rained since.
I know. So what happened is our sod got a little bit dry, and as we look out at it, it's hard not to be discouraged with all the work that we did to have
yellow grass that we're still praying takes.
That it takes
that we hope actually turns green.
There's some miracle that it will actually turn green. But what I was thinking about is, so all during this sod laying adventure and getting the front yard ready and the backyard and everything else, there's many of the streaks that I did the laughably simple, yes. Write a sentence, read a verse, run or walk at least a mile. All of those things were the laughably simple. And I think about Dr. Alex Korb when he was on, as far as the upward spiral. And one of the things that he said, and that I actually thought about a lot as we feel discouraged, is it's the small, simple thing that will help your brain connect the neurons that will keep you out of depression. And that going out on the walk, even though it may not have felt like it was doing anything, it's doing so much more than what you ever think it is. And that's what I think of with you, with the sinus infection and with the discouragement out there. And you still did it. And that's why I go back to, I said people think you're crazy. But what's really crazy? It's crazy that if you don't do it, your neurons in your brain actually start to connect to other things that keep you in a downward spiral rather than an upward spiral.
The other thing, I totally agree. Because I have 2 streaks right now that I was doing better on. Well, one that I was doing better on, and then lately has just been a real bare minimum. And that was one that I adopted, which is to stretch for a minute every day. And for a while, it was going so good because I was doing yoga and I had this 30-day yoga thing that I was doing and I was loving it. And then with summer and my schedule getting all twisted and then spending so much time working on the yard and then now getting sick, I've kept that streak alive. But
Which one was it?
Stretch at least a minute every day. But I have to admit, the last 3 weeks, every day I do it, I'm like, should I even count this? And I've asked myself that question every single day. And I've thought, and every day I've had to sit and be like, do you know what? I'm not doing a full yoga workout. In fact, some days I've just stretched out laying on the ground and stretching. But the thing that I've thought is I want to get back to this place where I'm doing yoga every day. And I'm not doing that right now. But by stretching and having to mark that streak off every day, it's a constant reminder that I want to get back to it.
Right.
And even though I'm not doing very much, I'm still thinking about it and stretching a little bit every day, which no matter what is more than I would be doing if I was doing nothing.
Yeah.
Which is, I know what I would be doing if I didn't have the streak. It would be nothing.
It reminds me of, we didn't have her on the podcast, but she was one of our streaker features, and that was the Swedish, was she Swedish? Swimmer.
Yes.
Who said people often would ask her, because she had a swimming streak, to swim every day. And I think it was, 500 meters or something
it
like that.
was a lot. Is it a little intimidating
It was
to
a little
other people?
intimidating.
Yeah.
But
she's...
they would say, well, aren't you worried about injury?
Mm-hmm.
And she would turn it around and say, well, you're sitting all day. Aren't you worried about injury?
Seriously. You're not doing anything. Aren't you worried about injury? She has a valid point.
And there is a
very valid point.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that overcoming discouragement, I don't know if it's overcoming it or if it's staving it off or if it's just working through it, but having the streak, physical, mental, spiritual, intellectual streaks that keep me on the right path, help me in those situations. I mean, we talked last week about my tire changing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Similarly, I look at the experience I had here. There were many different things that went wrong. I mean, trying to install
I can't
type.
tell you how many times I've thought in my head, why are we doing this ourselves? We should just pay somebody to do this.
Right. Is it really worth the
Is
experience?
Is it worth it? But it is. I mean, everything comes at a price. And this one has been an interesting price because, like you said, what have we had to pay? Physically, it's been taxing physically, emotionally. But
Ibuprofen
also,
has been my friend in the mornings.
But looking at it and looking at the things that we've learned along the way.
Yeah.
Which are oftentimes those intangibles. Sometimes I often wonder how often the thing that we're doing is really the important thing, or is it what we're learning along the way?
Right.
And so, yes, I want a beautiful lawn. I really do. But the opportunity that we've had to work with our boys and even for them to learn how to work through discouragement, how to recognize that, yes, watering your lawn really is important. Or yes,
Well, you know
timing
what, though?
things out, working on project management, understanding that you think you've gone to Lowe's enough times to have everything you need. And then you recognize that you didn't, and you have to go back.
I was so thinking about one of our other guests, Brooke Romney.
Yes.
And
she was a more recent gift.
52 modern manners for teens. And as we have done this project, I think about the different things that we've been able to talk about with them in relation to some of those 52 modern manners for teens, and being able to talk about interacting well with adults and being able to hold a conversation. In fact, Chance just had an interesting experience.
He did. He went on a little hike with a friend the other day, and the mom had texted and invited him to come.
Was it the friend's family, or was it?
Yeah, it was the whole friend's family, and the family was going on a hike, and the boy that was the same age as Chance, it was his turn to invite a friend.
Okay.
And so he invited Chance to go with him. So it was Chance and their family going on this hike for the day. And so I texted her at the end of the day and just said, thank you so much for inviting Chance. He had a wonderful time. And she texted back and said, he is such a delight because he does such a good job holding an interesting conversation with an adult. And I texted back, that's the product of being the end of 7 children. He's had to learn how to talk up if he wants to talk to people.
Yes.
But I think that is in relation to what you were saying, as we've worked out in the yard, as we've worked on projects together.
Family mealtime together.
Family mealtime, those things that you have the opportunity to talk about things and learn to work through things. And for him to see us work through things. Legitimately, when I could not find those sprinklers, I was really mad at you. It was windy. Our grass was dying.
Right.
The sprinklers weren't working yet. And I could not find these last 2 heads. And Chance was the one helping me. And he saw me say, this is so stupid, so many times when I couldn't find those sprinklers. But seeing how to work through those moments and
which is critical as you look at it and consider it. Another little moment with Chance, which was really neat, is he had helped me to put all of the plumbing together, to hook up the sprinklers to the plumbing, to get the back flush valve installed, to get everything ready to go. And he was with me when we threw the switch. And that is a moment, because
when it works,
you just
well,
wonder,
and you pray.
Yeah, you pray that it will actually work. We had one little mishap. We threw the switch, and I had forgotten to clamp one corner, and so it blew out very quickly. Turned it off, got that corner clamped, and we threw the switch again. pressurized, and that's the moment when it pressurizes, you just pray that nothing is leaking.
Yes.
And Chance, it was really neat because we came out in the yard, we turned the sprinklers on, and he goes, wow, this is really cool.
It actually works.
That was it,
and
too.
we did all of this. Yes.
And therefore, that, again, looking at, so if I look at what Brooke Romney was saying as far as 52 modern manners for teens, there's a critical component of that we talk about what they are. The critical component is who's teaching it.
Yeah.
And the opportunity for you and I to have worked right alongside with all of our children, I believe, is priceless. Whereas had we doled out the cash to have someone come and do it for us, yes, we'd have a nice yard. Yes, it would be probably perfect. It'd
probably be green.
It'd be green right now. But what we wouldn't have are all of these cool memories that I now cherish forever. Because as I think back through the history of our family, in one of our other homes where we put in a yard, we also put in a stream. And that stream was a 92-foot stream. And the reason I know it was 92 feet is because I measured it several times to get the number of rocks that we needed to put it in. We had your brother help put the rocks in.
Yep.
But then every other year after that, we would clean the stream out because it would gather all kinds of dirt and yuck and muck. And we have so many fond memories of pulling the rocks out of the stream, getting it all cleaned up, putting the rocks back in. There are pictures and laughter and music and fun. I remember one picture, it was Natalia, Rose, and I, and we had mud just
all the way literally up to your elbows.
Yes. And the picture is all of us flexing.
Yes.
Up to
and
our
those
elbows.
Are amazing memories and amazing times that you build along the way. Going through these experiences.
Going through the experiences, which I look at as that's the 52 modern manners for teens.
Yep. And it's interesting because as you're talking, we have these memories with our kids. And as I'm looking at this list that we have of our guests, it's fun to look back and kind of feel some of those similar feelings of memories and the times that we've talked with them and the things that I've learned about from talking with them.
Right.
And
who else comes to mind?
I think about, so we had Ann Garcia that talked to us about college and being college planning. And since talking with her, we've opened
a
529 account and are actively working towards saving for college, even though we've spent a lot already on it.
Yeah.
But just recognizing with talking with her, how much college financing has changed over the years and the preparation that goes into that differently now than what used to. And just getting educated that way was huge.
So going down the financial route still, we had Ben, what is his, Hakama?
Yeah.
And now, we use his financial planning services. And so I don't know, maybe the podcast is just serving
all for us.
us.
I think of Jeff McEwen, who was
he was fantastic from Australia. And Christina Carlson, both from Australia.
From Australia. And loved what I learned from. So Jeff McEwen, when I think back to the podcast with him, my takeaway from him was how important it is to be seen. He talked about growing up and having a really kind of a rough go of it with his parents, just the situations and different things that had happened, and reached a point as a teenager that he was ready to end his life. And his mom's friend saw him and just was like, "Are you okay?" and gave him a hug. And just that act was enough for him to rethink his plan that he'd had for that day after school and to give it another day. And so we spent a good portion of that podcast.
Yeah, his plan after school was to take his own life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was pretty intense.
It was significant, super significant. And what changed that was one person just seeing him. Mm-hmm. And that has impacted me so much that that was my big takeaway of how important it is to just see people. You never know what's happening in their life, and to just take a moment and see them. I was, you mentioned the Come Follow Me app, and I was on it the other day, which is, and they had, it was Global Refugee Day a couple days ago. And they had a couple on the app that was sharing some of the things that they've learned as they've set up a refugee outreach program for everything that's going on in Ukraine. Yeah. And she told about an experience. So when they first got there, it was really overwhelming, and they were trying to figure out how the best way that they could help all of these refugees that were trying to cross over into other countries. And she said, when we first got there, we realized we were looking at all of these refugees, and they were carrying all of their belongings in like grocery bags. Mm-hmm. And she thought, they need suitcases. They need something that they can carry their stuff in so that they can be more mobile. And so that's what they did. They gathered a whole bunch of suitcases, and they went across, and they were delivering suitcases. And it got to the point that they had one suitcase left, and she saw these two women in front of her, and they both needed suitcases, and she had to decide where the last one was going to go to. Oh, that's and so choice. She ended up giving it to the woman that had a small child on her hip, and she gave her that suitcase so that it would be easier for her. And of course, obviously that one was super grateful. And then she turned around and looked at the other woman that didn't get the suitcase, and just saw how crestfallen she was, that she obviously was, when you're in that moment, even something as simple as not getting the suitcase is just another crushing blow. Yeah. And the woman that was, and I wish I could remember her name. I didn't plan to tell this story, or I would have looked her name up. But the woman that was giving out the suitcases says, I just was devastated and thought, what can I do? And then she looked at this refugee and she thought, I just need to give her a hug. And so she just walked over to her and just gave her the biggest hug and just held her for a moment. And when I was watching the video of this, I thought of Jeff McEwen's podcast again, of how important it is to be seen, that we can't always fix the problems that we want to, but we can always take a minute and see a person. And she did that. She just stopped for a moment and took that opportunity to see that refugee as a person, and take a minute and just give her a hug and say, I see you.
That brings a little tear to the eye. You weren't crying at all, were you?
I wasn't crying at all. No, I wasn't crying. You were crying. I'm not crying. You're crying.
Yes, you were.
But I just, that has stuck with me so much. And
so that relates to Brad Aronson, the small acts of kindness. I mean, where he talked all about the different things. That is a small act of kindness, and how it can change the world.
The farm book?
No. That was David Elser.
That was David Elser. Brad Aronson. Oh, yes. Brad Aronson was the small acts of kindness of his book is it called Small Acts of Kindness?
I think it is. I'd have to look at his book. You have it on your desk right now.
I do. But. Yes. And his book is all about all of those things that make such a difference in people's lives.
That are tiny.
Tiny little things that you don't notice.
But they're a ripple they're a pebble in the pond that causes ripples forever.
Yes. Yep. And he was a recent one too. And then I did bring up David Elsner. Is that right? Elser. Mm-hmm. And the things that he learned growing up on a farm, and recognizing again the small, to me that was recognizing, stopping for a moment and seeing how the things that you're doing in regular life are teaching you lessons. That's what I loved about him.
So bringing it full circle to putting in the yard, right? I mean, not a farm by a long shot.
However, heavens, but really microcosm of the same thing.
In process, learning along the way the small lessons that life can teach as we do things together.
Yep.
Which I think is
and taking a moment sometimes to stop and recognize those lessons, to stop and recognize that maybe what you're trying to get done isn't always the most important thing. Maybe it's the things that you're learning along the way.
Okay, we got to pause a little bit on that for just a second. Maybe the things that you're doing aren't the most important thing. It's the thing along the way. Is that how you just said that?
It's the things you're learning along the way, yeah. So for me right now, maybe the grass isn't the most important thing. And I have to tell myself that, because there's a lot of things that we've learned along the way that have been important. And maybe things won't turn out exactly the way I want. And maybe they will.
Maybe they will.
But that's life, is that a lot of times things are going to turn out exactly the way you want, and a lot of times they're not. But there's things to be learned along the way no matter what. But I think we have to again, bringing it back to streaking has taught me how important it is to be intentional. And as we go through life, there are a lot of things that can happen that if we're not intentional to stop and recognize, oh, I had the opportunity to learn that through this. Then we can just be going through the motions.
Yeah.
It's the difference of two people that can be doing the exact same thing, and one person's just going through the motions and the other person has a massive learning experience and it changes their life.
Yeah. What was it? You were listening the other day to a speech about it's like this, it's an experience that happens to one person, but there's two different tellings of the story.
Yes. It's the stories we tell ourselves.
Yes.
And it was a talk. It was actually a BYU speech, and he was relating it to a scripture story, actually a story in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
And it was fun because he told that story from two different perspectives. And one was, you could see it this way where all of these things worked out for my benefit, or you could see it this way where I've been pretty picked on and I've had a lot of things taken away from me. And the interesting thing is he said, if you look at this story, both of those things are true.
They're both true.
He said there was a lot of benefit that had happened, and he did have a lot of things taken away. Both of those things were true. And then he went on to talk about how important it is that the stories that we tell ourselves shape the trajectory of our life. That by basing it, how we decide to look at those stories shapes and determines where we go. And the thing that my takeaway from that was fascinating to me was recognizing that both things are true. That both it was a positive and a negative experience at the same time. That those things all happened and were true. But by choosing the narrative that you want to tell, you have the opportunity to decide how you're going to feel about that experience, how you're going to share it with other people, and how it's going to shape your life.
Wow.
Which to me, again, was one of those things I thought, okay, there's a truth there. We have things happen to us all the time. And the same experience can have positive things about it and very negative things about it. And the way that we choose to tell that story to ourselves determines how we feel about things moving forward.
As I look at all of the guests that we've had on the podcast, each one of them have had an experience that has been somewhat a defining moment. And interestingly, they chose how they were going to respond to that defining moment.
Yeah.
They had to deliberately choose, even to the point of Jeff McHugh. I mean, he could have looked at that and said, well, you only recognize me now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's too late.
It's too late.
Or he could see it as, oh, she actually sees me. And both would have been true.
Exactly.
Yet the narrative or the opportunity that he has, what truth he holds on to, then really does define what he does going forward. And now he's changed the world, the world around him. He's had influence in so many different areas. I look at that in so many different of these areas. Justin Sua, one of the individuals that we had on our podcast, who is a coach for mental health, but for the Tampa Bay Rays.
For elite performers.
Yeah, for elite performance, as far as being able to have the right mental mindset. Well, he started out not really in that whole line. I mean,
he wanted to be a seminary teacher.
Yeah, exactly.
And it started in a total different trajectory, but then different things crossed his path and different opportunities, and he ended up someplace totally different.
Completely. I look also at Jim Hewling, Chris McChesney, Jim Hewling. I mean, one of our mentors. I thought
about Jim and Sarah's a lot because theirs was to find your passion.
Yes.
To find that thing that you're passionate about and find your fire. That was it, was find your fire. What are you passionate about? And that's what's been interesting as I looked at all of our list of guests that we've had, is that they've each had something that in some way was like, this is my fire. This is what I feel passionate about. And this is what I want to share with people. So I think about one of our very first people on our podcast was Megan Sumrell, who is productivity and planning for moms.
Yeah.
And I just love that I still follow her and have done her program and listen to her podcasts and love her passion for being able to be a productive stay-at-home mom and how that, how is stay-at-home mom changes and how you can still be productive with all of the challenges of being flexible and calendaring.
You've presented Streaking a couple of times to her group, and how that fits in with goals and habits and what it looks like.
Where it aligns, yes. And so...
just an interesting thing on that. So she taught us something interesting as well. We've often talked about, how do we present Streaking? How do we help people see and understand what it is and how to use it? And we had presented to her workshop. I think there was 20, 25 women that she was teaching, and she invited us to come on and to share with them Streaking. And when we had shared the first time, we talked about Streaking in relation to goals and habits, and
where a streak
would fit in. And if you think about it just for a moment as you're listening to this, a goal is something you achieve, something that you accomplish by a certain period of time. So I'm going to read a book in a certain number of days or weeks or a month. That's a goal. I'm going from not reading the book to completing the book in 30 days. It has a start line, a finish line, and a deadline. So that's the goal. And oftentimes people will set goals, and what happens is with goals is you either accomplish them or you don't. You either win or you lose. You either succeed or you fail. So a goal has a very specific function. And then you look at habits, and the way that habits are defined, especially in modern vernacular by Charles Duhigg and James Clear, some of the foremost authority on habits, is it's something you do automatically without thinking. And when you have a habit, that means that you're doing that with, just without even thinking about it. For example, how you type on the keyboard is a habit, and how your fingers fly across there is automatic.
I have an example. I have been taking Bowen to work, which is at an aquatic center in Lehigh, every day for several days. And I went to pick him up the other day.
Great example.
And I had just driven there and without paying attention. And I'm just sitting out there waiting, and he's late and he's late and he's late. And I finally texted him. I'm like, "Where are you?" And he goes, "I'm outside. Where are you?" And then it dawns on me, he's not at work. He's at karate. But I just drove to where I had been habitually driving automatically without even thinking about it.
Yep. Now, between a goal and a habit is a streak. And the way that this works is no matter what, all habits start with a streak. You had to deliberately start driving to the Lehigh Aquatic Center every single day in order for it to become automatic. Prior to that, it was very deliberate, and you were striving. So you had to have a streak that was doing it. No matter what, all habits start with a streak. The other thing is, no matter what, all goals, you stand on your streak to reach for any goal.
Yeah.
In order to read or to get it done, you have to read every single day. So a streak fits in the exact spot it needs to be, which is between a habit and a goal. And sometimes the things that you streak will never become habitual.
They will always require a level of intentionality. Yeah.
And other times, what you streak, you will reach for your goal. For example, and here's a perfect example of this one. I have a streak to run or walk at least 1 mile every day. I had a goal to run a marathon. I didn't get the marathon this time. I had a hamstring injury that prevented me from... Well, it didn't prevent me. This is kind of an interesting one. It didn't prevent me from running the marathon. I could have done it, but I didn't want to sacrifice the streak. And had I run the marathon, I knew, at least in my heart, that it would sacrifice the streak. In other words, I would have injured further my hamstring. And so I gave up the goal, or I failed at the goal, but I kept the streak alive. And it was interesting because people asked me, "Well, did you feel really discouraged?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was a little discouraged." But what I had was the floor of success on my streak that I could keep going. Now, the reason we brought all of this up is you go back to Megan Sumrell, and we had presented Streaking to her group in that way once. And then the second time we presented, we didn't present it in that way. We just talked about streaks and streaking. And she came back and gave us really good feedback and said, "My group didn't understand the second time you presented that, how streaks fit into their life."
Yeah.
And so from that point forward, we thought, okay, we really do need to put in place exactly where streaks and streaking exist, which is the place where you get very consistent and consecutive in order to stand on that streak to reach for the goal. And also, if you want to start a habit and strive diligently to have something become automatic, you have to intentionally have a streak.
Yep. And that's been ever since then, we've been able to really remember that helps people understand,
right?
Like where that streak, where
helps
it
me
fits,
understand.
helps
I
me
mean, exactly
understand
where
too.
it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. What about Whitney Johnson?
Oh, one of our favorites.
I know, one of my favorites, being on hers and her being on our podcast.
And she's all about disrupt yourself.
Yes.
Which is what streaking is all about, is disruption. It's disruption in the sense also of self-improvement, looking at it and saying, do something laughably simple and keep track that you're doing it and share it in a community. That's one of the things I look at in the Streaking app, is all of these people that are sharing laughably simple streaks. Make my bed, read a verse of scripture, go outside. I mean, we talk about the streak of the month.
Yes, we're just starting that. We have a couple. We're going to start a streak of the month, which we're really excited about, because we
started it. We had the first one,
now,
which was drink or go outside.
May was to go outside at least once a day, and
drink
June
a bottle of
is
water.
Drink a bottle of water. And the thought process behind streak of the month is this feeling of collaboration, of as a whole group, we are going outside together at least once a day. And that one has been really fun to watch people posting about in the app, and recognizing that you're kind of working together as a group, and recognizing that just being able to go outside once a day helps.
Yeah.
Like, it helps me feel better about things.
And we have gotten some phenomenal pictures of people going outside.
Yeah.
And any number of those pictures are inspirational and motivational.
So we've had May was to go outside at least once a day. June was to drink
at least a bottle of water
once a day. And
at least one bottle of water a day.
July is going to be connect with a family member.
Okay.
At least once a day. I think it's at least once a day.
Is it a day? Yeah.
Just to connect with a family member.
That'll be fun.
And we thought that might be kind of fun, as July is, at least in the United States, with it being summer, a lot of people have family reunions and opportunity to kind of just connect with your family in a little bit more fun and casual way.
So as you think about Whitney and what it is that she did is doing with Disrupt Yourself and the S curve of growth, and as you look at the S curve of growth, again, streaks help in every single part of that S curve of growth.
Yeah.
As I look at it, where we've been disrupting ourselves, doing what we've never thought we'd do on a regular, or never thought we'd do, in the sense of sharing streaking with so many people across the world. We never thought of this, but it was all part of the disruption. I have to tell you one little story with Whitney. So this morning, I get notifications when we get feedback on the app. I get notifications when any tag is created. I get notifications when a group is created. And in the notification, it says who the user is and what the tag is that was created. And on the feedback, similarly, it says who the user is and what the feedback is. Well, Whitney sent feedback this morning.
Oh, okay.
And she said, all of my streaks disappeared. Is this recoverable?
Oh, I thought, my goodness.
Oh, no. Now, quick pause. Yes, absolutely recoverable. We have all streaks, no matter where they are, backed up on our servers all the time. And so it's completely recoverable. I don't know why her streaks disappeared, but then I got another feedback and it said, oh, they came back. Never mind.
Okay. That is okay. But she experienced what we all feel when it's like, wait,
what just happened?
Where did they all go?
Exactly.
And I don't remember how long they were, but it's important now for me to know.
I know.
And you're right. That's one of the beautiful things that was important when we started the app, was to say these need to be backed up on a server.
Well, because we thought about just having a program out there that it would, I guess, maintain the information on your phone, on your device, which probably would be okay most of the time. However, what we do now is it's transferable across devices. Yep. It's always backed up on the server, and your streaks are safe.
Yep. measured by the day that you started them.
Yeah.
And so,
So it made me a little bit nervous because I'm like, oh, here's one of the individuals that we've not only had on the podcast, but also has a significant influence across LinkedIn and the business world. And I thought all we need is for her to be losing her streaks.
I'm glad they came back.
So stay with me. I am going to write her a note. That just happened this morning. So
what about, who else did we have? So one of my favorite was Chris Dancy, who is considered the most connected man in the world. Mm-hmm. And he was really fun because he talks, and by connected, we mean that he uses technology in every aspect of his life to understand his tendencies, to understand what he's doing.
Right.
Everything. And so his has been really fun to think back on the podcast that we did with him of recognizing how we can use technology to learn more about ourselves and to get better at things.
Yeah.
And he's
so many more guests, so much more time we could spend on them.
I know.
I like John Fisher, lawyer who is just phenomenal, wrote in his book about streaking and how it's changed his life. Chris McChesney, one of our greatest fans, and we're one of his greatest fans. We could go on and on and on about all the different people. What we want to do, though, is say thank you to everyone. And we know we haven't mentioned everyone for being on the Streaking podcast, and to all of you for taking streaking and really using it in your life to become who you want to be. So as you go forward, if there's any guests who you would recommend to us that we have on that you'd like to hear from, we'd love to hear that. Please let us know. You can reach out to me at Jeffrey, Jeffery, at streakingmastery.com.
Nope, at thestreakingapp.com.
Dang it. I always, it's still there. See, that's a habit. I know. Jeffrey, Jeffery, at thestreakingapp.com, or
Jami, Jami, at thestreakingapp.com.
You also can download the Streaking app at any time and have the opportunity with that Streaking app to track your own streaks and do what you want to do and become who you want to be. Hopefully, we'll be able to see you or hear from you, or you see you on the Streaking app. Please feel free to follow us anytime on the Streaking app. Download it, grab the Streaking book, read all about it. Until we see you again, keep streaking.
Things that make a better